session on managing strategic implementation. So strategic implementation is the phase when a strategic plan is put into action. That could be at a corporate level, a functional level, and there'll be goals, responsibilities, and timeframes associated with that plan. The key thing to be aware of is that a plan is created, but there is no guarantee it is successful. And there are various areas you might want to consider to how successful or how likely it is to be successful, that plan, of course. So the first thing to think about is how effectively it has been communicated. It's going to be harder to be successful if it's designed by only a few senior employees in terms of communicating it to the rest of the employees in the organisation. Meanwhile, it will be easier to communicate this and look for successful implementation if there's no resistance to change, or if you're able to effectively overcome the resistance to change that is likely within the business. And here you're thinking about Kotter. More details, cards up there. Next thing to think about is, has as much time been spent on considering the communication of the plan as its creation? So there are things to think about in terms of the communication of the plan. Alongside that is the leadership. So has leadership been effective in the implementation phase? So has leadership discussed or involved both corporate and functional areas within the plan? And are they aligned? The next thing to think about is, what is the perception of employees and of managers to the leaders' commitment to the implementation, particularly in the implementation phase? Also, you might want to think about, on the communication side, those timeframes. Well, have they been communicated well? And is that being matched in terms of behaviour by the leadership? If, for instance, there's a need to do this plan fast, implement the plan fast, implement it quick, is there a sense of urgency from leadership? Is it clear that that's happening? So number one, communication. Number two, leadership. Number three is the organisational structure. You've created a plan. You're looking to be successful in its implementation, but does the org structure, the organisational structure, make sense for that plan? You could be thinking in terms of, number one, functional structure. If you've gone for a functional approach, do each of the functional areas have a plan? Does HR have a plan? Does marketing have a plan? Does operations have a plan? Does finance have a plan? If you're looking in terms of whatever the plan you're trying to implement is a expansion into a product range or a geographic area, a region, well, do you have a structure that reflects this? Does the organizational structure make sense for that plan? And the final area to look at is, if you have a plan that requires you to be flexible, have flexibility in the organization, then do you have a flexible organizational structure? Are you, for instance, using a matrix structure? It's more likely to be successful if that is the case. The final area to look at in terms of the implementation of the plan is, will network analysis or critical path analysis be used throughout the implementation phase? Because if you use network analysis, well, then you're going to have awareness of the timescales, you'll have awareness of floats, you'll be able to prioritise, because you're aware of them, the critical activities, and you might establish that there are some critical activities on the CPA, and therefore that's known beforehand, so you might put things in place. For instance, perhaps you need a particular supply as part of your plan. Well, then you might switch from just in time to just in case to ensure you have backup if it were to go wrong, because it's on the critical path. So you'll make sure you'll implement that plan successfully. I hope that helps. See you at the next session.